they throw up their hands in frustration and say, I'm out of here. And then they wander into this wilderness of, hey, by the way, this vibrational machine can heal all diseases and all the rest. And it's like, and these are typically not stupid people, but they are desperate.
Hey all, a short one today with Tane Nix in Dubai. I recorded a few months back at a fantastic conference there, and we do a short version, a discussion on Chinese medicine versus the Western version. And I think it's a great discussion. I hope you enjoy it. I certainly did. And just a little heads up before we go ahead, I'll be in the UK in the Ledbury region, probably the 29th, 30th of August coming in around 2 weeks' time. So watch out for an update on the actual venue and times. I'll probably do a couple of shows on that Friday and Saturday. But with that, let's get back to Tane and delve into which is the best medicine.
Hey, great to meet you, Tane, in person.
Great to be here. Thanks, Ivor.
No, thank you, and really enjoyed your talk yesterday, looking at something close to my heart, the limitations of our current Western medical system and how there's a much better way of doing things. So I guess maybe a brief background of yourself first, and then we get into a high-level view of that talk.
Yes. Broadly speaking, I came across, and I had some kind of penchant to study not medicine per se, but medical systems. Where this came from, I don't know. I was interested in health and healing, like a lot of people are. As an athlete, you're trying to optimize performance. So this started very early for me, but then a series of very, very strange events unfolded that gave me a chance to study in a very unusual way. I was backpacking and traveling as a young guy. I ended up in Central America. I met an old natural healer, around 1999. I ended up starting an apprenticeship with him in 2000. And I got good fundamentals, like very good chops about how to think about natural healing from my mentor between 2000 and 2009. And so we went very deep into this. And the result of that was I was exposed to a type of thinking that very clearly met a need that wasn't being met in the modern medical system. And there's a lot of dissatisfaction, but there's also a lot of confusion about why people are dissatisfied in the modern medical system. And so the talk yesterday that you alluded to, I did not expect the reaction that I got from it, but people really got it. And what I was explaining, and that we can go into a little bit here, is there is a type of, it's not a mentality, it's an actual cognitive model about how you make sense of health and illness. And I discovered along the way that dominant medical system has a sort of signature cognitive, the word is epistemology, like what they value as knowledge is obtained from one portion of the brain. I mean, really the work of, that I mentioned yesterday, Ian McGilchrist, and that wonderful work that he did, The Master and His Emissary, which is just wonderful reading, but it's really dense. It's obviously very high level stuff. He's talking about hemispheric cognition and the way in which one particular half of the brain, in this case the left hemisphere, is really concerned with a version of reality, that both hemispheres have their own version of reality. And in times of chaos, his argument and his postulate is that when you see civilization in chaos, as the West is very clearly now, that what you're also witnessing at the level of brain cognition is that these dominant ways of looking at things are at their warring factions right now. And that this left hemispheric version of reality is really, really, really bought into, invested in a kind of checklist administrative version of events. And they can't get out of it. And you can see this both in our society and our culture. And the parallel that I was making yesterday is that what McGilchrist discovered about the way the mind makes, or the way your brain is cognizing and making sense of stimuli, is precisely represented in the Western medical system. The modern medical system has become, first of all, the medical system writ large is beholden to administrators. It is not run by people who care about patient outcomes. It is run by people who care about profit outcomes. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows that the incentives financially run in the wrong direction for good care. But my point yesterday and my point in this conversation is that it's deeper than that. there is actually, if you think about doctors going through medical school, most of them don't make it. So the people who do make it and put MD after their name have really bought into this version that is taught in medical school, which is that deeper, truer health reality, the reality of health and illness, of medical reality, can be glimpsed and understood by reducing things down to smaller and smaller subunits. So you're always working with a bias that by its nature negates context. If you're looking at the molecular level for the cancer cells, you are not paying attention to how the liver and the stomach and the spleen and the intestines interact. That is not your focus, because it can't be. Because you're focused right deep down. I mean, the metaphor, I didn't use it yesterday, but I've used it before. When I was in California in graduate school studying East-West integration medical systems and how they fit together, I went on a whale watching trip with a friend with some schoolmate kids. She was a teacher. And we went out in Monterey Bay, and I got my binoculars, and I'm looking for the whales, and I'm looking for the whales, and I can't find any whales. And take the binoculars down. There's a pod of 75 whales, like all around on the ocean, but you can't see them because you're focused on that one point of ocean. Well, that's an appropriate metaphor for the medical system right now.
Absolutely, Dane. And it resonates so much, not just with my own knowledge from the last 10 years of the medical world, which is exactly as you say, ultra focused into specialties and missing the whole picture. But even my corporate career in complex problem solving, we had the most esteemed role was the integrator. And I acted as an integrator before as a manager. The integrator has depth and breadth. So we got all these engineers who are brilliant physicists and PhDs and content specialists. And they get lost in a problem because they are fixated on their specialty, and that becomes the big pain. Left brain, reaching, grabbing, focusing on their thing. And then we've got the kind of project managers who can stand back, but they are weak in the real deep science. The integrator can do both. Left and right brain, depth and breadth, is able to go deep, but knows which of the myriad different areas to go deep in, because has the big picture. Mm-hmm. So it's just fantastic.
Well, two of the characteristics of this left hemispheric cognition, and they're worth repeating here, they're worth highlighting. Number one, the left hemisphere cognizes reality in a way that is self-referential. And the point that McGilchrist makes is that technology is also feeding this. In other words, we are not only trapped where the world is now being run by people who are definitely 100% positive that they're correct, which is the second feature I'll say more about in a second. But
the experts.
Yeah, the experts, but that their reality reflects back to them that they are correct. In other words, it's like, we're going to do a bunch of reductionistic medical studies, and our results prove that reductionism is the superior way to treat. And what you talk about with integration and an integrator, a dot connector, right, writ large, like the person with true value today is somebody who not only understands, in this case, right, sticking with medicine, like clinical applications, how to treat patients and get good results, but also the administrative piece about how this specialty also fits in with this specialty. That doesn't exist in the medical system. Those people don't, there is no job description for somebody who does that kind of level of integration. It's like, you're a cardiologist, you're a nephrologist, and you're a gastroenterologist. Do you all understand what you're doing, right, with one patient and how you affect one patient? No, they don't, right? Because everybody's siloed knowledge, and then the feature of your particular specialty reflecting back to you that, of course, your worldview about your very tight, focused, reductionist ideas are totally and 100% correct. And the second piece is the characteristic of left hemispheric cognition, and again, you see this in medicine, is that one of the characteristics is that there is no other version of events. In other words, not only are we correct, not only does our data prove that we're the smart ones, there is no other way to look at this. Our way is the way, and if there was another way, well, it's all hocus pocus, and it's all New Ageism and all the rest. And that's typically what happens to patients who run into and finally become frustrated enough in the modern medical meat grinder, right, which is appropriate in some cases, is that they throw up their hands in frustration and say, I'm out of here. And then they wander into this wilderness of, hey, by the way, this vibrational machine can heal all diseases and all the rest. And it's like, but, and these are typically not stupid people, but they are desperate.
But they, by their nature, they've become searchers, and people who have the ability to break from a system that's broken and to search can sometimes maybe go a little too far. It's one of their talents to search, and sometimes they're a little too good at it, and they find, as you said,
searching is not finding, right? Like by itself, yeah, you're going to do some searching. If you have a serious condition and modern medicine let you down, you're going to go looking for things to do, but you're also going to be very vulnerable to every snake oil, offer out there. And that's exactly what I see dealing with patients who are going through that journey. And my point yesterday, and the point that I want to make for viewers is, so then the question becomes, well, is there a system that can help people with what they're dealing with today? Well, what are people dealing with today, by and large? Overwhelmingly, we have a population, partly because of aging and demographics. Overwhelmingly, the problems today are not, and this left cognitive, let's give the devil his due here, this left hemispheric cognitive model has created a medical system that is hands down by far the best emergency medical system ever created, and nothing will ever eclipse it. They got that part nailed down, and thank God they do. Right?
And surgery, particularly, things
surgical
like implants.
If you treat the left hemispheric model does use mechanistic metaphors. And so what do you see in our medical system? The body's a machine. But again, can you treat the body like a machine and have tremendous health outcomes? Of course you can. You can keep people alive in really serious situations the heart is basically a pump. You can keep the heart pumping when otherwise this person would die. Or, the mechanistic metaphor does have application. It's very helpful, but it is largely helpful at the level of emergency acute conditions. What are people suffering from today? I've been to an emergency room. We've probably all used it at some point, and thank heaven it's there. But most people, and certainly as you age, you're going to deal with a chronic condition at some point in your life. Aging is a chronic condition, right? If you pathologize how we age, you're going to run up against things that can be better treated by, and this is now the $64,000 question, is there a medical system that treats what people are dealing with in terms of chronic degenerative functional complaints? And the answer is yes. And it has nothing to do with New Ageism. It has nothing to do with, when I say New Ageism, I mean that there is a bias within a certain segment of the so-called alternative medical community where if you press these people hard enough, if you ask enough questions, but how does that work? And what's the mechanism behind that? Et cetera, et cetera. It does break down to the final envelope when you open it says, if you think positive, you're going to heal. And there is something to that, but it's not a professional system, right? Positive thinking by itself does not heal all disease, much to the chagrin of the New Age community. And so the question is there a logical cause and effect system that helps and is exactly targeting chronic conditions? And the answer is yes. And that's the system that came out of China over roughly 2,400 years ago. And that system is not unique or special or beneficial because it's Chinese. It's not good because it's old. It's good because they treat according to patterns of signs and symptoms. And when you introduce a cognitive model that is mostly focused on, here's how this relates to that. If you have liver imbalance, the spleen is going to be affected this way. Let's check for symptoms over here. So that you have this gestalt understanding in a pattern recognition system. Lo and behold, you have massive power over your chronic conditions. And mostly you don't even need a doctor for that. I mean, you may, but at some point it's like, well, once you understand this system of go down a checklist of your patterns, figure out which symptoms are present and which patterns may be represented by that, and then using simple stuff, diet, exercise, state of mind, which does matter, and then simple, cheap, affordable, not dangerous remedies and treatments that almost anybody can get without a prescription become very, very, you have a lot of leverage over your chronic condition.
And yeah, what I like, and I only got the briefest intro yesterday, and of course we'll put the link at the end to your website and how you can find your way to more descriptions of Chinese medicine. But to be honest, it resonated with me with GPs, old GPs I knew that were essentially functioning in that manner.
That's right.
Right brain and just standing back and not like the modern guys. Also, I found that pathologists I've been extraordinarily impressed by pathologists over the past 10 years in my medical world. Brilliant, brilliant men. One lives down in Cork. Another in America, Joseph Kraft, discovered the whole insulin, post-meal insulin and diabetes type 2 axis. I won't get into it. But the pathologists, actually, I realized, by nature of their job as pattern recognizers and problem solvers, and I know you can think of them as looking down a microscope at a cell, but that's not it.
No, but they have to take that data and think laterally.
Yes, and they're brilliant. But, I see some of the best medical people in the system, either the old GPs of old or the pathologists and other much broader integrating specialties, kind of just match up with your description of the Chinese approach. So really interesting.
Yeah, old timers, general practitioners would be the people, but you do see these people being not pushed out, but they're dying out, right?
Squeezed.
They're dying out. It's the money's in specialization. The money's in siloing your knowledge and then getting $100,000 for an operation. That's where doctors with lots of debt want to go after they finish med school. So
it's actually beautifully so. I don't mean beautiful because it's terrible, but for the industry, it naturally, inexorably went there. You've got to divide and conquer to maximize profit.
Yeah.
Segment your market, get it highly specialized
as possible.
Be indispensable, and then work that vein.
Yeah.
And that's
charge as much as you can get. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So, hey, I know we have limited time,
Awesome.
Tane, but this is a great intro. I'll put on the screen right now the best link to, or maybe you could mention it, or I'll just put it on the screen.
I do there's an easy way into this material, Ivor, for your people. Go to pivotprotocol.com. This is specifically for people with digestive illness, but you'll see some of what would walk you down the path of understanding your condition according to patterns, even if it's not a digestive condition. But you can contact me also at the email that I'll give you for your people. PIVOT protocol, PROTOCOL.com is the best way into that, and then they can contact me by email as well.
Perfect. And one last thing I mentioned just before we close, because I intended to mention it, you were actually brought up to one of the big boys. I'm very familiar. Was it Mayo or was it Cleveland?
Cleveland Clinic.
Cleveland Clinic. You were actually brought in, even though you have this very different side of the house, they brought you in to educate doctors in kind of what we talked about.
The whole thing to me is still surreal because technically, I have no qualifications to be teaching doctors at Cleveland Clinic. I don't have a medical degree. I do have a license that I have kept current and probably will not continue to keep current to practice in Colorado. But at the time that I did that, I literally cold called Cleveland Clinic to do what's called a grand rounds for their doctors. They flew me in, or actually brought me in from Chicago and paid me, and I talked to them about this. And I said, you're a Cleveland Clinic. You guys are a cutting edge operation. If you want to stay that way, this is what you're going to do. And by God, they took the idea and ran with it, to their credit, right? Which was the goal at the time. Like, could we franchise clinics where people are healing on their own? Well, needless to say, there's not a lot of interest in the medical system for people healing on their own. And so it's not that I was naive and I thought it was going to revolutionize medicine. I thought it was worth a shot to see what kind of reception it would get. And of course, it was shot down. And they said, that's really interesting. We really appreciate you doing that. And we never heard from them again.
Once it goes
Which
back,
was a blessing.
Once it goes back to the management for review, they say, we don't smell green here. We don't see the dollars here.
Where's the angle here? Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good
Awesome,
man.
Great
Thank
to
you.
talk to you. Thanks very much. Yep.
That'll do it, folks. As I mentioned, I'll be in the UK in the Ledbury area, 29th, 30th of August. I'll probably do 2 shows in a pretty big room, and it's going to be great. So I'm going to cover all of health and all of geopolitics and all the challenges we're facing in the world today. And also, as always, huge thanks to my Patreon and PayPal supporters. Really important in these difficult times. I really appreciate that you guys can help me out. And anyone else who wants to jump in, I do vlogs a couple of times a month. I do a monthly Zoom call with patrons at certain levels, and it's a great community. So thanks so much, everyone.